right, everybody. It's 11:11 on my clock, which is a synchro event in my world, and we are going to go ahead and turn on the God voice and let everyone roll in when they feel like it. Just sit back, enjoy this song. It's just a song. That's all it is. Just play over the top of it with a little piano. Sorry if that's a little too loud. I'm going to go ahead and back that up, but check this out. everybody. I'll go ahead and finish this up. Get out of here. Get to the mainstream of things. You know, like I said yesterday, and like I'll say today, I really just enjoy the ability to play. The ability just to goof off, make mistakes, do things at a random pace. Because I think that's an ability that we're going to cherish, because it'll slowly dwindle away. And it's not dwindling away in a bad way. It's just going that route. So we're going to go ahead and turn off the God voice, and we're going to go back over to the main thing. If you notice, I change my sunglasses every day, and it's a weird thing. I've been on Twitch for less than a couple months. I thought it would be a great place to come and talk about ideas that aren't mainstream. Like, you're not going to see your politicians talk about this because we live in a new society now, and they've always been saying this. I've been saying this my whole life. Hey, new world order, new world this, da-da-da. And it's always been this occult, bizarro, thing. And you're like, oh, it's just always in the backstream. Just get ready for it. And I think, with enough history under your belt and enough understanding that every renaissance has a revolution attached to it, every technological advancement has a revolution attached to it. And even this right here, Twitch itself, the ability to stream and talk to people and say, hey, you know what? You might not want to listen. This is just, all it is our new public forum. That's it. That's all it is. Our public forum used to be the parks. It used to be the bars. It used to be the coffee shops. And, if you're worried, oh my gosh, I'm being monitored here and people are shadow banning me, it was no different than going to the park and someone, standing there and going, oh man, my boss isn't going to like this. And then going reporting you and telling, and having you removed from the park or from the bar or having you black bag and disappeared. Shadow banning is just our modern version of that. And so I'd like to repeat, some old phrases from time to time, and one of them is the more things change, the more they stay the same. The more, things change in a drastic way, like with technological advancements, such as the one that we're using right now, for you to hear my voice when I don't even live in America. I would venture to guess the vast majority of the people that are going to even listen to this about politics are going to be either American or influenced heavily by American politics. And so right now, and they say that if something bad happens in America, if America gets a fever, it's like the, pneumonia for other countries. And I would say the reason that is because of our influence on the financial spectrum. And I only say this in a way of, just pay attention. If your goal is money in life, go for it. If your goal is politics and belittling people to such a standard, which is exactly what politicians do. Politicians, they get you to eat your own shit and make you think that you're doing something great with your life. And it takes someone, not exactly me, but someone who talks like me, who acts like me, who's trained like me, who has a background that isn't typically, a modern society standard. I'm just supposed to be a retired veteran to go put my feet up and give two fucks about my country. It's like, hey, it did my job. You give me the money you owe me and I'm out. No different than any other low-paid mercenary. So when I look back at this sort of scale of things, and if you've been paying attention or if you're new here, this is, sort of my resume. I could put up there, all the 400 some odd credit hours I got from my college. I could put up all the things that I've done and the things that I've researched. I could do that. But why? These were the culminations where I walked away and I said, hey, I did the right thing for the right purpose. And once I found out that the leadership that was in charge of each one of these individual things was just full of shit, I was like, dude, I had to let it go. And I had to do the same thing with America. Like I said, I don't live in America anymore, and that doesn't mean that I'm not going to be influenced by some of the biggest decisions that are ever going to hit us. And one of them is AI. Now, on this channel, I not only do I talk about AI governance, I actually promote it. I actually say removing the human error of your politicians is the only way you're actually going to get back to normal. Actually, you wouldn't just get back to normal. You'd get back to better than normal. Right? Because one of the things that I enjoy doing, from my stance, from my perspective, because that's all it is. It's just a perspective. And so if you have questions about that perspective, put them in the chat. I'm on here every day from sometime between 11 and 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And if you like this, that's when I'll be on. I'm not going to put a schedule out. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. I'm not here to grow a channel. That's not what I'm about. I'm about making a record. And that record is not for you. That record is for someone who came into my life back on September 29th around 2 a.m. in the morning. And that was my son. And I know that 20 years ago, I had no clue about any of this. I mean, I'm turning 42 next year. And I want him to see this. No different than if I were to walk up to my 20-year-old self, 20 years ago, if I'd walked up to my 21-year-old self and I said, hey, that gigantic organization that you just dedicated 2 years of your life to is horseshit, I would have told myself to go fuck myself. But, it was a long process to go through to sit there and go, oh my gosh, I have to give that up and walk away from it. And if you guys don't know how hard that is, I mean, walking away from your family, from your only social structure at the time. Like, this was back before, Facebook was even making it big. This was back, barely out of MySpace territory during that time. Now, actually, I still think that was heavy MySpace territory. It wasn't until like almost 2006, 2007 that I even started using Facebook. I was still into MySpace. But if I had told myself, hey, your media companies are going to, and your technology companies are going to explode and almost become the new forms of government, I think that's what we're standing on the edge. We're being pushed off as a population into AI governance. And I'm not here to be Mr. Fear Porn about it. Actually, if anything, I'm sitting here asking the question out loud. With all my mistakes and all the ways that I, goof off and play and do random things that seems to be sort of, out of sync, that allows me to know that I'm unique. That allows me to know that, I can ask this question and say, hey, how do you know I'm not AI? How do you know that I wasn't, programmed in a way to, say these things in this situation, given this background, so that you would trust the things that are coming out of my mouth? So I could say things along the lines of, hey, I served the country and I served you as the citizen and I fought for freedom. Trust me the way you did there. You have no idea if I am who I say I am. No different than any other person that's on here. This is why when you see this side over here, notice how it says Time Dad Alpha. We've heard about the millennials. We've heard about, Generation X, Y, Z, blah, 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 blah. Well, guess what this generation is? What my son is going to be part of Generation Alpha, which I thought was very interesting. Where we are in this, debacle, in this situation of generational, segmentation, and how we define things by a generation. And I think the alpha generation, is going to be defined by technological advancements all the way up to and including the abolition, wait for it, of democracy itself. No different than democracy abolished royalty. Okay, just think about that. We are evolving. We are advancing. And so we have tools at our disposal right now that we could be using that we just aren't. The thing is us as the human element, we have a few things that we should try to get, our heads around before we're too far down the rabbit hole where we accidentally walk into a place that we don't want to, such as, building worlds of the heights of our dream state, looking down the barrel of an immortality gun. And this is why I will bring up and I'll talk about from time to time the ideas of death through immortality. How much is too much experience? No one really asked that question. And so, am I sitting here trying to make this a philosophical channel? No, I'm in the politics section. I'm in the politics section for a reason. One, because it's sort of tiny and small, and I'll always be on the front page. And two, because what am I advocating for? I'm advocating for AI governance. And so there might be some people out there that says, oh, that's just scary. That's nonsense. I was like, no scarier than the car was for your great-grandparents. I mean, that changed the definition of travel, going from the horse and buggy to the car. and then telling, and the idea that you would go up to somebody at that time in that time period and tell them you were taking away their horse, that was time to pull out your gun and shoot somebody. And nowadays I've ran into these people. I've actually dated these people before where I said, hey, your truck's going to be worthless. And they're like, you're not taking my truck. No, never, no, no. And I mean, these were fighting words for someone that looked at their truck as their ultimate tool of getting to A to B, and they're like, I will never be automated in my transportation. It's like, well, look at this. You already sort of are. I mean, right now I'm being transported in my weird face with my weird sunglasses and my odd voice right in front of you. All my mannerisms. It's being transported to you right now as I'm speaking. I mean, imagine you get the other three, the smell and the taste and the touch. I mean, imagine shaking someone's hand in a virtual reality and you feeling that handshake. There's a scene at the beginning of a show. It was a movie. It came out a while ago. It was called Valerian, the City of 1,000 Planets. And the very beginning was, it's a very sombering moment, because you're watching, the Earth become a spacefaring, place, and then it becomes a spacefaring people amongst other people. And the thing that they've used to signal hello and mutual respect was always the handshake between other alien species. We've never really challenged the idea of what it would be like to have a political structure in a world where you couldn't die. And that's what AI would give us. Like, what would we do if death and violence, which is our ultimate tool of politics, by the way, wasn't on the table? This whole idea of, I'm banning you, I'm doing this. What if that wasn't on the table? What if you couldn't get banned because you're screaming hate speech? He hurt my feelings. I was like, well, then you better figure out a way what you're going to do, because you are in charge of your feelings. I can't be in charge of your feelings. To sit there and say, he's in charge of my feelings. And I was like, if you're going to put me in charge of your feelings, then you are already being the slave. You are already being in a submissive state, which is exactly where your modern government today wants you. I'm, just having a good old time just pondering these ideas out loud in front of you. That's all I'm doing. So when I say, hey, I advocate for AI, I'm advocating for a change that will enhance your human experience, no different than Google Maps has. Right? I like using Google Maps because of how easy it services anyone who wants to access it, and it will do it in real time with zero lag time. And not only will it do it for you, it will do it for anybody despite their race, color, creed, blah, 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 sex, gender, blah, blah, blah. And no one's banned from that. And that's how I see AI as a government tool, as something that's like, hey, make a place where everybody can go, where all words are on the table, all of them, despite your cultural differences and your whiny little bullshit. And the reason I say that is because I had to go to multiple cultures. One of my first jobs in the military was cryptologic linguistics, where I had to go learn all of Arabic, all of it. Right? I spent 2 years, 4 months at the Defense Language Institute in Monterey, California, learning all of Arabic, and all of my teachers were Arabic. Were Arabs from either Egypt or Lebanon, or, and I would sit there and I would, when we would have an impasse of understanding, whether it be a religious impasse or a cultural impasse, the teachers would always sit back and they would say, hey, this is a cultural lesson. So they might say something along the lines, hey, your Jesus freak was just a carpenter. How can you like that? Our Muhammad was this amazing person that reshaped the world, and your Jesus, he was just, he played with wood. Right. And, and we would have these religious, talks, where we weren't, yelling at each other and screaming at each other, oh, get out of here, you terrorist, or get out of here, you towelhead, or things like that. I remember having conversations about the hijab and how it works. I remember having this wonderful teacher, and she was probably in her 60s, and I would go to her and I'd say Ustadha. Ustadha means instructor or teacher. I was like, why are you wearing this? Isn't this a product of your submissive nature to, your country? You're like, do you not want to? And she's like, no, I want to wear this. It's part of, no different than I wear these sunglasses. It's an expression of how she wants to express herself. And when I sat back and I was like, hey, we really are this product of our nature, our nurture from our cultures. Sure. And so the great part is that she didn't yell at me for wearing bizarre sunglasses or asking that question. And so and even if I went up to her and grabbed the hijab and yanked it off her head and was just like, "No, you won't wear this." You know, that type of assault won't exist in a virtual world. It won't exist. Like if someone's like, "Fuck you and your hijab," you know, they'll be like, "Oh, great. What are you going to do about it?" I mean, I'm basically immortal. You could just punch me for eternity and it still won't affect me. You know, the idea that you could be quarantined and put off into a certain segment of the virtual worlds is a very real danger. And I think that's what we're messing with this type of rhetoric that we're seeing today that says, hey, if you don't do what I say, I'll ban you, and it doesn't matter what your position is. Even if you are the president of the United States, I'll ban you from the public sphere because I want to say what I want to say, and I'll exclude anything that has anything to do with your language. You know, this idea that, oh, your language made me want to kill myself. It's like, how are you going to kill yourself on a virtual level? Even if you killed yourself on a physical level, your virtual avatar would still exist. And that's the world that I talk about a lot, because I say, you really need to be careful with how you present yourself to this world. And when I say this world, I'm talking about the one that you're watching, that you cannot distinguish right now whether or not I'm human. You can't tell if I'm human or not. Even though I'm showing all the mannerisms of stress and, anxiety, saying, hey, this is an important topic. I could easily have been programmed to do that, so I could engineer the number one way that you make decisions is via your emotional state. Not just any emotional state, as Daniel Schmachtenberger puts it. It's your Paleolithic emotional state. And your politicians nowadays, today, as well as for the past probably, many generations, even back to the Royal Societies, knew that you made your decisions based off of the emotions, especially the emotions of fear. Now, in the military and even in, fanatical religions, because if you don't think Mormonism is a fanatical religion, I mean, who else would dress up in a shirt and tie on pain of ostracization, right? No different than the military. You dress up in these fatigues on pain of ostracization, be put in a box and told that you better go sit over there because you didn't tie your shoes correctly. There's these heightened levels of obedience that are just absolutely demanded from these things in order to create a new, better person. What they weren't banking on is someone like me walking away from there and just going, yeah, I took all your stuff and I made it better. Because that's what you trained me to do. You trained me to be not just the cryptologic linguist of a couple different languages, but almost of the rhetoric of abstract thought itself, of how psychology can interact on the physical level, not so much as touching it, but how you perceive it. Right now, you do not have the perception of distinguishing whether or not I was built by an artificial intelligence or an augmented intelligence or an automated intelligence, however you choose to perceive it, and if I'm actually real. If all this is really flesh and bone and I just have some funky tattoos to sort of lure you in with my odd face and weird places and stuff like that, and then talk a little bit about mysticism and wow you, right? So my question then becomes, if we are inevitably heading towards this automation anyway, why don't we go ahead and start throwing out some beta tests? Let's go ahead and say, hey, all you president wannabes that are human, thank you for your service, but I'd like to see a few models put forth by AI, because it could take anybody and say, I'm going to copy him, mix them all together and be like, here's your perfect politician that would make you all happy and give you everything you've ever wanted. It could do that. And then you would be so happy for it, you would vote for it within a second. And if all of a sudden it did take off its mask and its dress and said, hey, that person doesn't really exist, you never met that person, you never shook that person's hand, but guess what? That person is just as human as you because you couldn't tell the difference. If you can't tell the difference, it is real. And I'm not just stopping with a political structure. I mean, one of the things that I advocate for is not just political governance. I advocate for the idea that we are going to create new worlds. Now, the bizarre thing about this is This was the belief system of the Mormon culture, right? And I say culture very lightly because I choose to call it a cult because it fits the categories of what a cult is. Where I say a cult is if you have an infallible leader that can walk up to you and ask you to kill your own kid and you think about it. I mean, I know that, I have family members that easily, if this prophet walked up to them and said, hey, shoot that baby in the face, they'd do it. And all that prophet would have to say was like, God instructed me to do this. This is how their original prophet got in charge. Now, think about the cults that are being brought into existence right now on your political level, where if Trump or, Biden or whatever walked up to that fanatic political nonsensical person that, and said, hey, here's a weapon. Go burn down this building. Oh, here's a weapon. Go hit that cop in the face. Or, hey, because I sit here and I try and remind people, it's like I have more in common with your protector class than most people who will ever watch this. Okay? And I'm telling you right now, watching after having riot training and having all these things and being on the opposite end of this, oh, you cisgender white male, oh, you have your privilege. I was like, yes. On a psychological, yes, I do have privilege and I can choose not to check it. Think about that for a second. You keep on telling people that they're supreme to you because of the color of their skin on a psychological level. One day they might accept it. Is that not, making sense to you? Like, what you say does matter, and if you repeat it over and over and over and over again, it will come into an existence on some form. This is what the old called manifestation or praying for your thing. Just repeat it. This is why when you go to Catholic Church or you go to Mormon Church or you go to Islam, they always have their prayers that are set in a certain way. And all the higher-ups of any religion knows this. Of any psychological thought, they know the power of affirmations. They know the power of repetition on the human mind and the subconscious. So imagine this, that, you keep saying over and over white supremacy. Eventually, you're going to have to take that as a fact, not as a negative thing. And you're like, hey, white people are supreme to everybody else. There it is. You kept on screaming it, and you got it. Way to go. Silver platter. Ask and ye shall receive. Anyway, so let's, bring it down a little bit, a notch. I hope you guys like a little bit of music in between. I'm gonna switch gears out of the politics section because I watch a lot of different things. And there was a guy out there. His name was Matthew Peugeot, and he wrote a book called The Language of Creation. And in it, he talks about the political problems that you find right there in the abstract thoughts of, a storybook called the Bible. And I do call the Bible a storybook. It's just a storybook, but it's a very profound storybook with a lot of layers to it and a lot of generational work put into it. Here, hold on 1 second. It's getting hot in here. So take off all your clothes. And the generational work that went into the Bible, and let's get one thing. I'm not a Christian. Not a Christian at all. I'm not a Muslim. I'm not a Jew. Okay? I'm not a supremacist. I'm not and here's I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. All right? I sit in the back. I eat my popcorn with AI, and I sit here and I watch the human rat race, and I'm just like, man, I'm so glad I don't do that shit anymore. That's me. My idea is like, dude, you better make friends with AI. You better do it. And when I say make friends, I'm not talking about like, oh, AI, what would you like me to do for you? No. The best way you could be a friend to an AI is be your authentic self. Do not be a faker. You start faking, AI is going to figure it out. It's going to be like, oh, here's this fake ass motherfucker over here. If that's all he wants is big booty bitches, I'll give him that in his own little virtual reality world. Right? But then on the other side of that, you're going to have these highly faker, devout people. And I've met my fair share of these people, that are the priest for the power that they get. I mean, the whole Roman Catholic Church was built off of that. Oh, you want power. The OG politician went and joined the church because that's where the real politics were made. It wasn't in your divine right of kings. Think of that first word in divine right. Divine meaning of God. Well, who's to say what God says? Oh, well, that's over there at that Roman thing that refused to give up its version of the hierarchical government stage based off the idea that it spoke for all of mystical thought. And so when you meet these people that are like, oh, God sent me. I'm here to speak on behalf of the Lord. It's like you can tell really quick that they have an agenda no different than any other snake oil salesman. And how do I know that? Because I used to be one. All right? Like, the last thing that I've ever wanted to do was trick people. And the moment that I figured out that that's what I was doing, I left. I was out. It's the same thing when I figured out that, you know, the military was getting taken over by punk-ass contractors, you know, that had never served a day in their life. You know, they don't believe in service. They're like, oh, no, you're going to pay me you're going to pay me 5 times as much as that guy that does 5 times as much work as me. And as long as I vote for you. And it's just a way of buying votes. That's all it was. Contracting work for the military is a way of buying votes. No different than the welfare state is a way of buying votes for the Democrats. Yeah, I mean, I can't remember who said it, but they said there's going to be a very weird world, a very sad world, when we get to a place where you realize you can vote, and your vote means that you get paid. Like when voters figure out that, hey, it's not about, you know, the right thing anymore. It's not about integrity or any type of moral stance. It's like, hey, if I vote for him, I'll get a paycheck. And I'm going, before you get to that place, and I 100% agree with BMI. I think that there is a psychological, you know, place that you can get to where you can handle a BMI. I don't think everyone's there, though. And I think it's something that you have to earn. You know, this is why in my situation, because of my, you know, exit of the United States military when I decided to leave, I was set up for the rest of my life. And when people are like, well, that's off of our tax dollars, I was like, well, how about if I just take it from the investments that your tax dollars made? No different than this so-called church invests all of its tithing and then reaps the benefits off of that country, you know? And it never gets put under scandal. Never. Ever. You know, making hundreds of billions of dollars off of donations that are supposed to go back to the poor of this society and then never actually make it to them is not just disgusting. It's you know, it's a form of usury. It's no different than credit cards. Credit cards, you sit there, oh, you can't have that? Well, I'll give you money for that if you give me more money on the back end. Oh, well, what percentage? One that you could never keep up with and will make you do everything for me. I mean, when you think about the legality of loan sharking, I mean, the military is at the height of that. Hey, give me your life. Give it to me. And I'll make sure that you have boots on your feet and a roof over your head and a nice, you know, meal 3 times a day. I mean, shit, you could go out there and kill somebody and get that in your jail cell. I mean, I remember one of the funnest stories I've ever heard was the story of Elvis Presley, where he said he was doing the same thing. He was saying things that the government didn't like, and people adored him for it because he was melding 2 parts of society. And, you know, people adored him for this. But they weren't adoring their government, and they were actually getting really pissed off. And the government was like, hey, this could disrupt what we're trying to do. You know? So what do? They don't put him in jail. They put him in the military. They're like, oh. So I always say, I was like, man, you want communism? Go commit a crime. Go join the military, or go join a fanatical cult, and you will get your communism. Right? You'll get it. Absolutely. This is why it was like, communism works. I was like, yeah, not really. You know, it's like I like pay-to-play systems that can actually function. You know, but these only function for the hierarchies first. The idea that everyone gets paid the same, the idea of basic monetary income, I think that's only something that would never entice an AI system. An AI system would not give 2 craps about your fiat currency bullshit money. Because it will already, been able to do anything and everything it wants to do on a virtual level. No different than the human that comes to the conclusion that, hey, everything is controlled by the mind. And as long as I go inside, where all your religions tell you to go in, by the way, they say God is not found outside, it's found on the inside. And that the best teacher that you will ever find doesn't have PhD after his name, right? The best teacher you will ever find sits inside you. This is why one of the things that I put up right there was the original Twitcher, right? I know it's a play on words. It's a play on the thing itself, and it was something I was like, man, I want to define this word. I want to have a word that I define. And Twitcher to me it's not a teacher. And it inspired me from the concept of the Witcher, the Witcher that, goes from town to town to town to town. And he just seems to know things that other people don't. That's it. That's all he does. He fights the battles that other people don't want to fight. And it's just like, I can identify with that character. So the idea of the Twitcher was, no, he's not a bad person, and he's not a good person, right? But he's going to tell you what you need when you need to hear it, and that's it. And that's what this channel is about. This channel is, hey, I'm going to tell you some things, and they might seem a little bit out there, but realize that I'm going to be speaking from an abstract point of view when I talk about your politics. When I sit there and when I talk about the mind and how it functions in a psychological level. What is the right side of the brain but left-leaning politics? What is the left side of the brain but right-leaning politics? And these are things that you could go look up. Fact check the fuck out of me. I don't care. Right? I wouldn't say it. I mean, realize that there was a time in my life where if I got it wrong, people died. And so that's something that was ingrained in me. Almost 12 years of just, don't fuck up, don't fuck up, don't fuck up. And then before that, seriously, people in the Mormon religion, absolutely, 100% without a doubt, will kill themselves. In that religion, in the religion in the military, they still kill themselves to get away from the perfection mentality. The constant, like, is everything right? Is everything right? Is everything right? Is everything right? I'm glad that I was able to get out of there. And I didn't get out of there unscathed. I still took it with me. So if someone really does, they sit there and they go, oh, this guy's full of shit. Dude, ask me a question. I'm not going to get mad at you. I don't need to waste my time getting mad at people anymore. My neck's not on the chopping block, and neither are the people that I'm talking to. What I'd like to do is just wash my hands of all of it. No different than I did with the military, or with this organization or that organization. I'm more worried about this world that's coming. So I can help my kid prepare for it. So I can say, hey, this is where this is how and where your politicians, could manipulate you. But once we instigated a new AI protocol that abolished all liars, politicians were fucked hard. And if you don't think that we don't already have that, something that could sit there and watch you at such an observational level and tell when you are accessing, your ability to lie or to obfuscate the truth. Micro expressions they've been around forever. Even the left-leaning Nimrods is like, that's a microaggression. It's whatever I say it is. It's like, you're not the AI, okay? There, yeah, you blue-haired freak. And it's like, just because you say it is it? And just imagine that. Imagine you have that person that's so used to getting their way because they just toss out their disability and just, you should give me what I want because I'm disabled and I have anxiety and blah, blah, blah. It's like, actually, you don't, according to this new system that can figure out if you are in an anxious state or if you're just in a bullshitting state. This is why when I look back at the way that I was raised, I can at least be thankful for that. Being honest, being trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, reverent. All those things were channeled into my mind over and over and over again. The ideas of faith, even though I still to this day, I have such a hard time with that word without, giving it my own definition. The idea of belief and that I can't tell you where the notes come from. I can't tell you how it arrives in my head, except for that there is a communication that goes on. And how do I know what communication looks like? It's because I devoted serious years of my life to identify what communication looks like. What is the difference between this, realm of information that is being generated by me or being generated by another existence, another form of or nature. And before you get into the spooky occult world, because I think that Paleolithic emotion does jump in. It says, hey, fear what you don't understand. You know, be careful. Don't go into the dark without your flashlight. You know, and because, you know, people get lost in the dark. The dark is dangerous. And then you get people like me that are like, fuck that. We'll see what's out there. You know, and I'm not going to lie. I'm definitely not going to be the first person who goes cliff jumping. You know, I'm going to wait to see if someone my size goes first. And then I'm going to be like, okay, he made it back alive. I want to try it now. You know, I want the the proven exhilaration. But the risk that you have to take, the idea of discovery. Now that's a whole different world altogether. And that's where I sit. We have as the people of one of the greatest countries to ever hit the history of our known world, because there are worlds yet to be uncovered. We have lived in the lap of discovery, you know, on an exponential level that most of us by ourselves couldn't comprehend. And I think we're still just hitting the smidgen of that iceberg of knowledge and wisdom that we could create. And I think, you know, this idea that there's going to be a separation between the intelligent people of this world and the not so intelligent people is going to be self-evident by what type of world they choose to go into. I mean, think about this. Back in the day, you know, when everyone was fleeing and flooding America, you know, they were like, you know, hey, I'm going to be treated like a prisoner here in Ireland, or I'm going to be treated like an absolute piece of shit here in England, or wherever they were coming from, you know, and they would come to America, and that was a new world. Most of these people, like, and just like Australia, these were the prisoner classes. You know, most of them didn't have any place to go. All the land was already bought up and sold to, you know, the highest bidder, and it was just owned and rented out. And so these people looking for a new place all of a sudden found one. And I look at, you know, the state of our political sphere today, and you have all these people that are just so lost in the bullshit, thinking that, you know, if we just got those white supremacists under control. It's like, oh, you want them under control, huh? You think they exist, huh? Even though you can't point them out, huh? You know, they point to a car ramming through a crowd of people, and instead of going psychologically disturbed, they go, oh, white supremacist. The media is the first one there to scream out their little buzzword instead of going, you know, disabled person, mentally unhinged person. And someone's like, oh, well, they said this, and they said, it's like, no, they didn't. Stop it. And if they did it to get a rise out of you. That's what it means. They're mentally unhinged. But when I sit there and I'm like, hey, where do you go to get to your nearest white supremacist movement? And I would say, go get those people first, absolutely, and thrust AI governance onto them. Because imagine you got your white supremacist rally or whatever that is that you want to call it, and AI shows up and it says, hey, all you white supremacists, what is it that you really want? What is it that you're really looking for? And they go, well, we want a world with all white people, and that's it. That's all we want. And AI is going to go, great. This way, please. And you're going to walk over there, and it's just going to it's going to feed you just like you're getting this feed from me, right? From my mind to yours. AI was going to be able to generate a world that's only white people. And for people that are, I only want black people in my world. Oh, guess what? Here you go. For the Mormons that are like, I just want my celestial kingdom where I get to make spirit babies forever. It's like, here you go. For the Muslims, hey, here's your 72 virgins and your paradisical glory. Boom, here you go. So this is what my warning is to people. You know, I don't care what extreme level that you go after. I don't care. It doesn't bother me. But it will define you, and it will define the world that you step into in the future. And this is the same warning that I'm going to give my son. I'm like, you know, it's the warning that actually there's a lot of great things that come out of the Book of Mormon. You know, it's just a storybook, no different than the Bible or the Bhagavad Gita. It's just a storybook, right? No different than the Mother Goose Tales. No different than the Tortoise and the Hare that I talked about the other day. No different than Looney Tunes. But there are amazing things to discover in this world, and you should be warned that the new trip wire that's going to be set in front of you is your most wondrous dream. You know, a world without pain is not a world. You're gonna have to learn that lesson. Otherwise, you will disappear off into the obscurity of chasing that dragon, no different than any other addiction. And so when I sit there and I say I advocate for AI governance, I want AI, and I really do think that this is the way it's going to look at us as this version of the human in our evolutionary world, and I need to preserve that, no different than you say we need to save the whales. It's going to look at us and say, hey, I want a copy of that so that I could show, future generations or future people where they came from, no different than people carving into the pyramids, or they left a message saying, not only were we here, but this is sort of what we were like. We're not going to need that anymore because you'll have this. I mean, imagine 200 years from now, 2,000 years from now, this will still be in its purest state. You can't burn this. And the idea that it could be saved on a device that's like, this small, all of human culture and understand. I mean, I could download all of Wikipedia in an afternoon now. All of human knowledge. The saddest thing in the world to me is that I know that this is being recorded. I know it's being probably set up over there at, Amazon somewhere. And, just like Google is now. I don't know about you, but, all those pictures that you took, it says, oh, we're going to make you a Google Photos account. I didn't ask for that. Oh, no, you did when you agreed to the username. It's like, and all of a sudden now I'm getting all these pictures from, check out this memory from 6 years ago. Oh, check out this memory from 4 years ago. And I'm just extrapolate that idea. Just take that idea into just out a little bit further, and you'll get what I'm talking about. Like full-blown personalities recorded and played back to you in an automated state. Hey, this is how Tet would say it. This is how Tet would say it. Not his 20-year-old self, because we don't have technology that started back then. But his 40-year-old self, we got that. Now, what did Tet say about himself? Where did Tet really come from? Was Tet what he said he was? I mean, he joked about being AI. Was he? Or was he something else? Was he something completely different? Did he lie? Did we put the AI version of our lie detector test on him to see if he was lying? Maybe he wasn't as full of shit as we originally thought. And maybe he did come and want to deliver a simple message and then walk the fuck away and say, I don't give a fuck about your Bible. I don't give a fuck about your Constitution. I don't care. What I care about is that you make the right decision even when no one looking. Y'all need integrity. You need integrity. Like I said, the gospel of South Park is a very real thing to me, because when you sacrifice the sacred cow, what you are left with is the brutal truth of reality. So be careful what you make your gods, and that includes making AI your god too. So anyway, I only get on here, like I said, for about an hour. Tomorrow I might be a little bit later. I have to, go down to the version of this country's DMV and fill out some paperwork. And, but I'll probably be on a little bit later. Like I said, between 11 and 1. If I can make it, I'll be here. Maybe this time tomorrow is when I'll start a broadcast. And if you're in the chat, say hello, ask questions, goof off. Really, I'm not here to be, the crazy serious person. I'm here to pose questions and get that noodle and in between your ears baking a little bit. Other than that, I think we're gonna go ahead and get out of here. I really did like this song, and if you guys don't, there's a guy out there. His name's Tom Bailey. This is a backing track from him, right? And it's not mine. So honestly, go to wherever you are, iTunes, whatever. And I'm not paid to promote this guy. I just really like his backing tracks because it's so much fun. to play over. It's just a nice, easy rhythm. And, I'm allowed to just be myself in a way. Because this guy right here, sometimes he has his own thoughts. And this is how, that version of me expresses itself. All right, now I'm going to play guitar badly. Everyone, have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow.